Evan crouched low among the glowing ferns of the alien forest, his breathing steady but cautious. The air shimmered with colors he had never seen before, as if the twin suns were playing through a prism overhead. Birds, or something like birds, flitted through the luminescent canopy, leaving trails of light in their wake. He had been observing the Lumari for days, learning their movements, their rituals, their games. Today, though, something felt different. A tension lingered in the air, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Ahead, two figures moved carefully between the tall, bioluminescent trees. They were small, no taller than a human teenager, but their skin glowed faintly in patterns that shifted with their emotions. One of them, Lyra, had a confidence in her steps that made Evan pause. He could sense her energy from here, sharp, calculating, playful, but with a dangerous edge. The other, Mira, moved differently. She was careful, almost hesitant, her glowing pattern soft and even, a contrast to her sister's flashing brilliance. Evan had learned a lot about the Lumari in a short time. Their society was complex, built around family ties, honor, and games of wit and strategy. They competed fiercely, and their games could be dangerous. Prey hunting, especially among the tribes, was more than survival. It was ritual, a test of skill, courage, and cunning. And now, as he watched, he realized something alarming. Lyra was about to put her sister in real danger. A low hum vibrated through the forest, signaling the arrival of hunters from a neighboring tribe. Evan's heart quickened. The hunters moved with precise coordination, their glowing weapons ready. He could see their intent. They were searching for young prey, and the two sisters were easy targets if they were separated or deceived. Lyra's eyes sparkled as she noticed the hunters. Without a sound, she leaned slightly toward the approaching group, her movements deliberate. Evan's stomach turned when he saw her lips move in a whisper. "I'm much tastier than her," she said, referring to Mira. Mira froze, her soft glow dimming slightly. She had heard the words, and for a moment, Evan could see the shock and hurt flash across her face. It was one thing to compete in their games. It was another to be singled out by a sister in a moment of cruel calculation. She took a slow, steadying breath, hiding her fear, but her mind raced. She needed a plan, and fast. Evan's instinct screamed at him to intervene. He wanted to run forward, disable the hunters, and pull Mira to safety. But he had been taught the rules. Humans were observers here, not participants. Interfering could have consequences. Still, he could not stand by and watch a calculated betrayal unfold. The hunters moved closer, their glowing weapons scanning the forest floor. Evan noticed Lyra subtly shifting her path, guiding the hunters' attention without touching them, without making her intentions obvious to anyone but herself. She was good at this. Her cleverness made her dangerous. Mira took a step back, glancing at the shadows where Evan crouched. She had noticed him days ago, always watching, always careful. Now perhaps she could rely on him. She made a tiny hand gesture, almost imperceptible, to signal that she might need help, but not yet. First, she had to survive the next few moments on her own. Lyra's smirk widened as the hunters approached. Evan could almost see the strategy forming in her mind. Like a puzzle she had already solved. But Mira had not been idle. She noticed the ferns ahead were thicker, the shadows deeper, and a small stream curved behind them. If she moved carefully, she could use the terrain to her advantage. She shifted her weight, moving toward the cover without making a sound. The hunters slowed, sensing movement, their attention still on Lyra. She had successfully drawn them toward her just as she intended. Mira used the opportunity to duck behind a tree trunk, her glowing patterns dimmed to near invisibility. Evan's pulse pounded in his chest. The forest around them seemed alive with danger, yet Mira's calmness gave him hope. She was clever, even in fear, and that was something humans and Lumari alike could admire. Lyra suddenly stopped, pretending to be trapped in a small clearing. She let out a faint laugh, soft and musical, drawing the hunters closer. Evan clenched his fists. He wanted to warn Mira, to tell her the exact moment to move, but he knew even the slightest sound could give him away. The forest was quiet except for the soft hum of alien life and the careful steps of hunters closing in. Mira's mind raced. She needed to act without drawing attention. Slowly, she inched along the roots of a glowing tree, moving in the shadows. Her small size worked in her favor. The hunters were focused entirely on Lyra, her performance flawless. Evan watched in awe, realizing that while Lyra's cunning was sharp, Mira's patience and observation might save her. Suddenly, a hunter tripped over a root, its glowing weapon falling with a clatter. Lyra didn't flinch. She turned the hunter's attention back to her with a subtle movement, ensuring Mira remained unseen. Evan exhaled silently, impressed by Lyra's skill, but wary of what it meant for Mira's safety. Mira reached the edge of the stream, noticing a natural bridge of stone and roots. If she could cross it, she could create a barrier between herself and the hunters. She paused, considering the risk. One misstep could reveal her location. She took a deep breath and darted across, her movements quick but measured. Lyra's eyes caught the motion, a flicker of surprise passing over her features. Evan felt a moment of tension. The hunters might notice. But Lyra quickly masked it, spinning a story with gestures and whispers, drawing the hunters away from Mira's path. Evan realized that both sisters, in very different ways, were displaying skills humans valued. Intelligence, strategy, and adaptability. Lyra's cunning was dangerous but brilliant. Mira's quiet observation was precise and courageous. The contrast fascinated him. Here were two beings, both capable of survival in a hostile world, yet their methods differed entirely. As Mira reached the far side of the stream, she paused, listening to the hunters' movements. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Evan, from his hidden position, admired her bravery. She had managed to stay alive without alerting the hunters, using nothing but her wits and understanding of her surroundings. Lyra, meanwhile, had led the hunters into a trap of her own making. A cluster of sharp stones and vines cleverly concealed caught one of the hunter's legs. He stumbled, and his glowing weapon flashed erratically. The other hunters paused, unsure, giving Mira extra moments to escape. Evan allowed himself a small smile. The sisters' rivalry had created a moment of balance, one where he could act if needed, but perhaps it wasn't necessary yet. Mira moved through the forest, silent and careful, her glowing patterns dim but steady. She knew the terrain, the creatures, and the rhythms of this alien land better than anyone could imagine. Her mind worked fast, analyzing paths, obstacles, and opportunities. She was no longer just the timid sister. She was becoming a strategist in her own right. Evan's heart ached for her, but also swelled with admiration. This was what he loved about humans and perhaps all intelligent life, the ability to adapt, to face danger with courage, and to use intellect over brute force. Mira embodied that perfectly. The hunters began to realize the trap, freeing their colleague, but by then, Mira had vanished into thicker shadows. Lyra continued to play her part, guiding them in circles while concealing the fact that her sister had escaped. Her skill was undeniable, yet Evan sensed cracks beneath the surface, a recognition that cunning alone could not always guarantee control. Night began to fall, or what passed for night on this alien planet. The twin suns dipped low, casting long, eerie shadows that twisted across the glowing forest floor. Mira found a hollow tree to rest in temporarily, catching her breath. Evan watched from a distance, considering his next move. He could not interfere directly, but he could observe, document, and perhaps help when the moment was right. Lyra, having finally convinced the hunters to leave, returned to the forest edge, her smirk fading slightly. She had survived, yes, but the events of the day had shifted something between her and her sister. She sensed Mira's cleverness growing, a new strength that could not be underestimated. Mira, from her hidden position, allowed herself a quiet smile. She had survived, learned, and grown stronger. She understood now that fear could be managed, danger could be navigated, and cleverness could be matched with courage. And somewhere in the shadows, Evan recognized that she had all the traits that made humans exceptional: resilience, intelligence, and heart. As the forest settled into the alien night, Evan knew that the story was far from over. The sisters' rivalry, the hunters' games, and the mysteries of this planet would continue to unfold. But for now, one truth remained clear. Intelligence and courage could shine even in the darkest places, and sometimes being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. Evan allowed himself a final glance at Mira's glowing figure, disappearing into the shadows. He knew he would return, continue observing, and perhaps someday witness the full measure of her abilities. And deep down he felt inspired not just by her survival, but by the unspoken bond between the sisters, the lessons of the planet, and the enduring power of wit and courage in the face of danger. The forest hummed softly, alive and vibrant, a testament to life's resilience in the universe. And somewhere within it, two sisters, very different yet equally remarkable, prepared for the next challenge, unaware that the ship landed on the icy surface of Zarina Prime, with a hiss of hydraulics and a cloud of steam. The ground cracked under the weight of the craft, sending thin streams of frost into the cold air. Jack stepped out, hands in his pockets, scanning the towering structures around him. The city looked alive but not welcoming, spires of black metal rising into a sky that seemed permanently twilight, glowing red at the horizon. He had been warned about this planet, about its ruler, the alien Queen Zarina, and yet a strange thrill ran through him. Danger had always been part of the job, and if anything, it made life interesting. Alien guards appeared almost instantly, gliding silently across the metal walkways. They were tall, four-armed beings with translucent skin that shimmered like oil in the sun. Weapons hung at their sides, and their eyes glowed faintly blue. Jack smirked, noticing that they were moving carefully, almost hesitant. "Well, this is welcoming," he muttered to himself. Before he could react further, a loudspeaker boomed across the plaza. "Human intruder. Step forward immediately and submit to Queen Zarina." The voice was deep, mechanical, and carried a natural authority that made Jack glance around. No one else seemed to be in the square, just him and the guards. Jack raised his hands in mock surrender, a grin plastered across his face. "Submit, huh? They should see me try that back home," he whispered. Memories of his ex-wife flashed in his mind, a woman who could intimidate the toughest men he knew. Compared to her, these aliens might as well be kittens. The guards didn't smile. They moved in closer, their forearms waving in unison like a choreographed dance of death. Jack's instincts kicked in, and he didn't resist letting them lead him. He noticed their precise movements and silent communication. This wasn't a group that tolerated mistakes. He needed a plan, or at least a way to survive long enough to see what the Queen wanted with him. They entered a massive palace built of black obsidian and silver steel, spiraling upward in shapes that defied human architecture. Jack's eyes darted around, taking in the intricate carvings, the glowing sigils, and the silent hover lights that followed his every step. The doors opened into a vast chamber, and there she was, Zarina. She was enormous, standing taller than any human Jack had ever seen. Her skin was a deep shimmering purple, and her eyes glowed like molten gold. She wore armor made of interlocking metal plates that seemed alive, pulsing faintly with energy. Her hair flowed like liquid, moving even though there was no wind. She roared as she stepped forward, a sound that shook the walls, making Jack step back a little, before he laughed. "Fear me, human," Zarina shouted, her voice rolling through the chamber like thunder. Her four-armed guards flanked her, each hand flexing in anticipation of a command. "Bow before your queen and swear loyalty or die." Jack, standing tall, tilted his head and gave a crooked smile. "After my ex-wife? You're adorable." He laughed, a short, sharp burst that echoed off the walls. The queen froze, momentarily thrown off by his audacity. The guards shifted, uneasy at their queen's reaction. Zarina narrowed her eyes, a mix of anger and curiosity flaring across her features. "You dare mock me? You are not afraid?" she demanded, stepping closer. Every step she took sent tremors across the polished floor. Jack stayed still, arms loosely crossed, unafraid. "I've survived worse," he said casually, letting his voice carry confidence without arrogance. "Trust me, you're not even in the top 10. For a long moment there was silence, broken only by the faint hum of the chamber's energy conduits. The Queen's fury was evident, but so was her interest. She had not met a human like this, one who did not tremble, who did not beg, who laughed at the threat of death. She decided then that this human was no ordinary captive. "Then prove your worth," she said finally. "Survive my trials and I may spare your life. Fail, and even your courage will not save you." Her words carried authority, yet beneath it was a hint of challenge, an unspoken acknowledgement of human unpredictability. The first trial was simple, in theory. Jack was placed in a chamber filled with shifting platforms, electric grids, and moving walls. Alien warriors stood at the edges, weapons ready. "Reach the center," Zarina's voice echoed through the chamber. "Only then will you have a chance to speak with me again." Jack sized up the obstacles. He could have charged straight through, but he knew that would be foolish. Instead, he used his agility, timing each jump with care. He noticed patterns in the moving platforms, subtle cues in the wall's movement. He improvised, using his belt to swing across gaps, sliding under deadly energy beams, and ducking just in time as a wall slammed shut inches from his shoulder. By the time he reached the center, breathing heavily but unharmed, the Queen's eyes were on him, glowing brighter. "Interesting," she muttered, almost to herself. "Clever. And lucky." The second trial was a test of combat. Jack faced a group of Zarina's elite warriors in a holographic arena, each armed with weapons capable of disintegrating flesh instantly. Jack had no weapon at first, but he noticed environmental tools: shards of metal, floating energy spheres, loose panels. Using these, he improvised shields and distractions, dodged attacks, and struck with precision, exploiting weaknesses the aliens assumed he couldn't see. It was chaotic, and at times Jack wondered if he would make it. But the human mind, he thought, thrives in chaos, and somehow, through quick thinking and a bit of luck, he survived the onslaught, leaving the warriors stunned and slightly disoriented. The final trial was the most personal. Zarina brought him into a chamber of illusions, where his deepest fears were projected as reality. Jack saw the faces of lost friends, memories of battles gone wrong, and shadows of failure that seemed to crush his spirit. For a moment he faltered, the weight of everything pressing down, but then he remembered who he was. He laughed again, quietly at first, then louder, letting the sound fill the chamber. The illusions shifted, confused by his defiance, as if they couldn't comprehend human resilience. "You think fear works on me?" Jack muttered to the phantoms, stepping through them with unwavering determination. "Try harder." Finally, he emerged from the chamber, breathless but unbroken. Zarina was waiting, standing tall, her expression unreadable. She had expected a trembling, terrified human, and instead she found one who laughed at danger, who survived trials she had designed to kill. "You are remarkable," she admitted, her voice softer than before, tinged with something she had not felt in centuries. "Admiration." Jack grinned, brushing dust from his jacket. "Thanks. Most humans don't get compliments from alien queens, though. I'll take it." For the first time, Zarina felt something unfamiliar, a spark of respect. Perhaps, she realized, humans were not as fragile as she had believed. And Jack, walking confidently in the presence of the most feared being in the galaxy, had proven it. The chapter closed with Zarina rising from her throne, her golden eyes locked on Jack. "You have survived. But do not think this spares you from the consequences of your actions," she said. Yet the underlying tone suggested that she was curious to see what he would do next. Jack, ever the human, simply smirked. "After my ex-wife, you're adorable," he said again, letting the words hang in the air. And for the first time in centuries, the alien queen considered that perhaps humans were more than just prey.